In today's video, the fastest way you can go from looking like this to looking like this, keeping all your muscle. We're gonna talk diet, training, and cardio. Hey guys, so for today's video, I got a great question on my Instagram direct message. You can go right here to my Instagram, where we're gonna discuss basically what the question was, why this gentleman is looking to lose weight so fast, and how you can do it too. I tried to research this, but the topic is controversial: crash dieting. I maintain at 16% body fat, 6'1", 210 pounds. This year I decided not to cut and focus to make up for lost time during the pandemic. However, a business opportunity has come up and I need to get to single-digit body fat percentage in a 2-month time frame. I don't get to be peeled for stage, but I need to be shredded in shirts and shorts. Typically, I'd cut over 4 to 6 months, reducing my calories slowly and upping my cardio. My meals are the same day after day during this phase. I remove portions from my plate as a means of reduction. I remove half the blueberries, etc. However, this won't work over a 2-month period. I know it's not optimal for health to go this hard, this fast, but it's once in a blue moon opportunity. Once at single digits, I'd maintain, then reverse the diet. I'm on TRT and take thyroid medication. So, all right guys, so we have a different situation here. We have the situation where the individual is looking to get as shredded as possible in a 2-month amount of time. And so this is something that often comes up with competitors. You see, yes, we would love to gradually reduce calories, lose weight at say 1% of body weight per week, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about what we can do. What is the most amount of fat loss that we can handle in an amount of time like this? Now, this individual at 210 pounds with a lot of training experience has a lot of muscle. So let's talk about what the goal is. The goal is to get in some board shorts. I'm assuming for some type of fitness shoot, fitness opportunity, meaning we cannot risk muscle loss, okay? We need to keep the muscle, lose the body fat. So what do we do in this place? Well, instead of focusing on what's optimal or what's the best way to do things, we're going to focus on what's the most amount of body fat we can get off in the shortest amount of time. And it might be hard on the body, it might be hard on the mind, but when you have a deadline, that changes everything. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves what's possible, not what's most beneficial, okay? What's possible in that amount of time? How much body fat can we lose? Can you reach your goal? Absolutely. And here's what I'm gonna suggest. So I've done a few videos on this topic. They've even done some research at the University of South Florida on something called a rapid fat loss protocol, where we basically set your calories at the basement level where they would be to get fat loss started. We can also start incorporating lots more activity. So let's first focus on the nutrition. How are we gonna set up the diet? Well, obviously to keep muscle, we're gonna make sure our protein's in a good place. Now I'm gonna guess that your goal is gonna be somewhere around, like, let's say 190 pounds, maybe 185. So we're gonna set your protein at 185 to 210 grams per day. That's a number that can remain stable, okay? The way we set the meals up is going to be 4 meals per day. That way we're breaking those meals out over the course of, let's say, 4 to 5 hours, separating them, making sure we're getting muscle protein synthesis activated 4 times per day. This is the real benefit over fasting. You see, fasting is a great approach, but what I found, my struggle with fasting was the limitation on how much protein I could get in my fasting window, okay? Thus spiking protein synthesis less times. So for you, my friend, what I would do is I would basically bake it up into about 50 grams of protein 4 times a day, starting when you wake up, and then throughout the rest of the day, about 4 or 5 hours apart. These large meals of protein are gonna really help with satiety, because we're gonna have to get very, very strict with the rest of the macronutrients. Now, I would not take your fats below 40 grams per day. The reason being that nutritional fat is going to be very, very helpful when it comes to things like digestion, when it comes to things like hormone production. Now, you have the added benefit of TRT and T3, but we'll get into that shortly. So, we're gonna set your numbers at 200 protein, 40 fat, and the basement for a gentleman of your size for carbohydrates, I would say, is about 100 grams per day. Now, can you go lower? Certainly. I don't, however, think there's much benefit to that. However, what I would really like to do is focus on keeping your training high quality, so some carbohydrates are gonna be important. Now, when calories are restricted, I find it very important to time your meals in a manner that makes sure that your training is fantastic. You're gonna have more energy earlier in the day, so the earlier you can train, the better, in my opinion. And if you can train in the morning and get about 25% of your carbohydrates pre and post workout, meaning you would basically be taking in 25 grams of carbs pre and post workout, or if you're gonna train fasted in the morning, you would take in those 50 grams of carbohydrates post workout, right? So those carbohydrates are gonna be really focused on making sure that your training is high quality, okay? Probably for the first week or two, you're not gonna notice much difference in performance, but as you begin to be kind of always depleted, you're gonna really notice that you suffer, and those carbohydrates timed properly are gonna be wonderful. However, we're not gonna go 8 hard weeks without taking a break. Gonna get into that towards the end. So let's talk about the next step, which would be cardiovascular exercise. So a lot is made of high intensity cardiovascular exercise. In fact, I've done it throughout my career as a competitor, as a coach. But what I've come to realize through my studies in exercise science is that the type of cardio you do determines the fuel source that your body uses. That's right. So I know a lot has been made in the last couple of years about insulin, and if you're spiking your insulin, then you're not burning body fat. That's nonsense. You actually will burn body fat if you're in a caloric deficit, and if you're performing cardio in a manner that uses fat as fuel. What kind of cardio burns fat as fuel? Low intensity, steady state. Why? That is the fuel source that our body preferentially uses. It reserves carbohydrate use for high intensity short bouts. So when you're doing low intensity steady state, your body is constantly breaking down body fat. The real benefit here is that you can do something like a bike, an elliptical, an incline walk, even walking outside, and you can do that for long periods of time without feeling destroyed, and you can do multiple bouts per day. So if I was trying to lose as much fat as quickly as possible, I would start off on this rapid fat loss protocol of 200 protein, 100 carb, 40 fat, and I would probably start with 2 1-hour cardio sessions per day along with my training. Now, why so much cardio? We want to get the fat off as effectively as possible, as quickly as possible. You literally have 60 days, and every single day is gonna matter. Now, how long would you keep this protocol up for? Well, typically what I would do is have 2 or 3 days in a row with double cardio sessions followed by a full recovery day. No training, no cardio. Now, once we start to get things moving, I would actually include a once per 7 day high carbohydrate refeed day where I would bring your protein down to about 180 grams. What I'm guessing is probably the top end for your lean body mass or your goal weight. I would bring the carbs up to 200 grams. And I would keep the fats at 40. This type of glycogen restore will not put body fat on you, but will in fact refresh your muscle glycogen, make your training better, and it can actually make your mood better and your sleep better. The real risk with going this hard, this aggressive for a long period of time is that it's gonna start to impact some things outside of the gym. And you can lose fat very quickly, but you might not understand the psychological ramifications that go along with that. Now, we can endure great things. Our bodies, our minds can endure great things. Certainly contest prep for a bodybuilding show, we typically gradually adjust things. However, your body can handle a lot, usually more than your mind can handle. The exception to that rule is when we have a very big goal. And every day we wake up thinking about this one goal, and it sounds like you have that. Now, I have the opportunity to work with amazing competitors, and that's why I see such amazing results. And if you saw our 90-day transformation challenge, which I'll put on the screen here, some of the before and afters, you'll see here that these are extreme changes. And when we interviewed them, which we interviewed the top 3 for both divisions, I'm missing one of the females, by the way, but what I learned about all of them is that they basically cruised for the bulk of this. They were losing pretty successfully until it came to the very end. And what I noticed about all the winners was they kind of threw everything out the window and just went as hard as they could. They did as much cardio as they could. They pulled out as much calories as they could, and they just kind of sprinted, not actually sprinting, but they sprinted to the finish line, knowing that the finish line was close. Well, you have 2 months to get to that finish line. So what's the fastest you could lose weight? You know, I would say in the early stages of this, you might notice 2 to 3 pounds of body fat, maybe even 4 to 5 pounds of body fat coming off. There might be some weeks where you don't actually see the scale moving, but remember that inflammation, digestion, all those things are gonna change. The fact that you're so restricted on calories and elevating your cardio so much, your digestive system's gonna slow down, and sometimes the food stays with you longer. That keeps the scale up. So you're gonna have to pay attention to measurements, pictures, as well as the scale to really digest this. Now, the real risk for men and even for women in going such low calories and such high cardio and losing fat at such a rapid rate, well, there can be a huge impact to our hormones. However, if you are on TRT, which you mentioned, well, what you can do is actually stay on top of this and speak to your doctor, because testosterone replacement therapy, I know a lot of people think that this is like a miracle for getting shredded, but it doesn't get you shredded. It's therapy to be a normal, healthy individual. You have compromised hormones. It's the reason I've never actually done anything like TRT, because I haven't needed it. My hormones have always been in a good place. However, when the day comes, hey, my quality of life is in question, it's certainly something I'll be taking part of, but it's not going to get any person shredded without training and without diet. It's also not going to put muscle on you without the stimulus of getting in the gym and resistance training. However, the compromise for natural bodybuilders such as myself is that when my body fat gets very low, yes, my testosterone levels naturally decline. However, I combat that through the use of diet breaks, refeeds, and taking a significant amount of time off between shows. I don't compete every year. In fact, the last show I did was in 2018, and I probably won't compete again until next year. So you see, I've allowed this natural flow of hormones to come back to normal, and I feel like my normal self. So for you to actually be taking TRT throughout this process, I would just try at least once or twice to get in to see your doctor. Make sure that while you're under this protocol, that your testosterone levels are staying where they need to be and that your dosage is correct for this process. Again, it might need to be increased, the frequency might need to be increased, but that's something you'll have to work with your doctor on. The key here is to understand that you have a deadline. You can push yourself very hard to get to that deadline, and then how do you come out of that? Well, maybe you'll ask me that question towards the end, but what I would do is plan a diet break immediately following that at maintenance calories, bring your cardio down to maybe 30 minutes a day, and just try to maintain for a week, and then start walking food back up and get back into your building season and building goals. And who knows, maybe if you do some fantastic work for this photo shoot, fitness shoot, well, maybe they're gonna want you to stay in shape, and you're gonna need a plan on how to do that. Just so happens to be what I do for a living, helping physique athletes such as yourself. So if you guys would like, subscribe, and I'm happy to answer your questions on my Instagram in the comment section, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.